Archie will officially be a prince as Harry and Meghan praise Queen Elizabeth.
My grandmother wanted to achieve when she took this huge responsibility on. She's managed. No one could have predicted how the world was going to change in such a short space of time.
The Queen is proud of Duchess Kate stepping up during the COVID crisis, while Meghan is speaking out about voting and coming home.
Meg, welcome home. I'm
Thank you.
so glad that you're home.
Me too, for so many reasons.
Plus, filmmaker Tom Jennings gives us an inside look at the new National Geographic documentary, Being the Queen, which dives into her royal scandals, Diana's death, and what nearly devastated the Queen's marriage to Prince Philip.
I think he managed to get through it, but I'm sure it was a very strained time for them.
We've got that plus so much more in today's Royally Us. Hello to our fellow royal lovers and welcome to Royally Us. I'm Christina, that's Molly, the host of the Diva Behavior Podcast. Hi Molly, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. We have so much royal news to get to this week, as always.
Yeah, busy week.
Busy week. I feel like we're finally off the high of finding freedom, and then there's some new news to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I think Meghan and Harry are just getting more stuff together for their next book. They're doing so much.
It's like I feel like they're busier now than they were when they were senior members of the royal family.
Yeah, they definitely.
Yes, they have stepped up. But before we round up all of our royal news, we have to check in with our royal watchers, our royal viewers, who of course had a lot to say about last week's show. So let's kick it off with CC2 says, Kate has nannies and other help. Kate does not have a full-time outside job. She could have shown some assistance. Now this was of course talking about in the excerpt of Finding Freedom, how they said Kate really wasn't showing that much support and lending a helping hand to Meghan.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong comment about Kate, I would say.
There's a lot of strong comments that happened.
Yeah, people got really passionate this week. I guess the thing about this comment is, Kate doesn't have a typical job the way that most people would see it. But, every time you see a new photo of her out at an event, I think that represents hours of work behind the scenes in terms of getting ready for it and doing research. So I think even though she's not sitting at a desk all the time, she is pretty busy.
Yeah, she's busy. And she's also juggling 3 kids, royal duties, and everything like that. So it's a lot. It definitely is. Cut her some slack. All right, next one goes to Norfolk and Chance. This was a long comment, so I just broke up a little bit of it, but said, why did Meghan feel the need to bring the UK voting policy into a discussion on the USA voting policy? Reason to have another swipe at her in-laws and the British establishment. Low, very low. She puts on a false smile, but is obviously seething inside. Woof, another strong comment.
Yeah, that's some interesting fanfic about her seething inside. I didn't catch that when I watched that comment. Did you?
No, I didn't catch the seething inside. She does talk a little bit. We'll get to it. I mean, we saw the clip at the top where she says that, she was happy to come home for a number of reasons. We'll kind of dive back into that. So sometimes you maybe see a comment that you can kind of read a little bit too much into, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows? And I just thought that was an interesting tidbit that she shared about Harry not being able to vote. I just thought it was really fascinating. I didn't think it was shady per se.
No, it's just telling it as it is. Okay, next one is XXXX. Meghan says, she says, Meghan always intended to return home. My personal opinion is she's too entitled to think she can marry into the British royal family without any intention of taking on that role long term. This is why William warned Harry, take time with this girl because the royal family and Prince Harry are important to William and his family.
Yeah, that also, again, really strong and passionate opinion. I think it's really interesting to say that she's too entitled to be in the royal family because I think royalty in general is sort of, there are some people who are entitled who are already born into the royal family, I would say. So I don't think those two things necessarily are opposite.
Right. Yeah. Lots of comments. You guys love to hate on Meghan and Harry. It's kind of we got to show them some love every now and then. All right, let's kick things off. Let's get into our royal roundup, our royal news of the weekend. Let's keep the ball rolling on Meghan and Harry because, like we said, they have been nonstop busy. They have been doing a ton of Zoom calls, a ton of charity events. So let's get right into it. So This time they sat down with the leaders in the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, and Meghan discussed joining the royal family, and they also gave a little nod to Queen Elizabeth. Take a look.
But it wasn't until joining the family and that I was able to meet so many young people throughout the Commonwealth. If they came with a question, they always offered a solution. Yeah. And that's what I think is so inspiring, and why I'm incredibly proud to be able to work with the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, but why it's the continuation of the legacy of your grandmother.
Okay, so what exactly was this conversation for?
So for this conversation, Harry and Meghan were speaking with some really influential members of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, which is basically an independent organization made up of young people from all the different countries around the world that are part of the Commonwealth, which is the British collective of countries that have the Queen as the head of state. So they talked a lot about the digital space and keeping things positive in the digital world. And I think they got a lot of really interesting input from the people they spoke with. Yeah. They were from Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Australia. So it was a really great talk. I thought they brought up a lot of good points.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I thought it was a really interesting conversation. They, talked about creating a better future for Archie. He even mentioned his military background and things like that. And like we said, gave a little nod to the Queen. And they also revealed their love for a self-help guru, right?
Yes, they talked about how they love Brene Brown. Mm-hmm. It was really interesting. Their faces lit up when the one young man on the talked about Brene Brown's ideas about vulnerability and especially how they relate to masculinity. And I thought that was really interesting because Harry has been so open with his emotional state over the years. And it's no surprise, I guess, that he's a big fan of Brene.
Yeah, and Brene also has some other famous fans as well, right?
Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow is a big fan. Oprah, I think, also. I mean, what better endorsements could you get as a self-help guru?
Seriously, doesn't get much better than that. Well, they also kept busy. They actually stepped out. They stepped out behind the computer screen and hit the streets at the Baby to Baby event. So they were volunteering for a good cause.
Yeah, they were giving school supplies, backpacks, clothing, and food to families who might be in need of those things as back to school week starts again. They especially focused on families who may have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. So they really, put their masks on and got down to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely did. They put those masks on and getting dirty and, helping a lot of people, because who knows, back to school is going to be so different for so many people. So it's nice to see them kind of lending a helping hand when they can.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And like we said, Meghan has been talking a lot about voting in the lead up to the election, and she actually used her influence to inspire Americans to get out and vote. And she recently sat down this actually just came out, with feminist activist Gloria Steinem. So take a look at this.
What worries me the most are young people who I understand are the least likely to vote. And I can understand the feeling that they don't think they have an impact. And yet it's more important for them to vote than anyone else, because they're going to be alive long after I am.
So this was surprising. We weren't expecting this one.
Yeah, this is like creme de la creme of feminist activism, is getting to sit down and talk with Gloria Steinem. I mean, you can see how excited Meghan is in the clips. Yeah. And how happy she is to be talking to Gloria.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, where was this? Do we know where this was filmed? Do we know any background info on this?
They're in a backyard and Meghan's dogs are there. So it's not clear whose backyard it is.
Right. We're hoping maybe we're getting a glimpse of Meghan and Harry's new backyard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful backyard, whoever it belongs to. It's very nice. I can't imagine a better place to interview Gloria Steinem.
Totally. Well, what's also interesting about this, obviously they had a great conversation about voting, but right at the beginning of the shoot, Gloria's like, "Welcome home, Meghan," like we saw at the top of the show. And she's like, "I'm glad to be home for so many reasons," which is also interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was, very interesting that she was that declarative in her happiness of being back in the US. I would love to hear her enumerate those reasons. I really want to know more because, especially even selfishly as someone who has moved from the US to the UK, it's
Right.
always interesting to hear someone else's take on the differences between the two countries. So I really hope she gets further into that at some point.
I do too. I do too. Well, she kept the voting train going, and she also spoke out again at another event. So take a look.
We can and must do everything we can to ensure all women have their voices heard. Because at this juncture, if we aren't part of the solution, we are part of the problem. If you aren't going out there and voting, then you're complicit. If you are complacent, you're complicit.
So yeah, so what did she say in this event? And it's interesting that she is really taking such a strong stance and really, kind of getting people excited, getting people motivated to get out and vote.
Yeah, it's really a perfect issue for her to take on as someone who until so recently was sort of prevented from speaking out politically. And yet she has spoken out politically before she was part of the royal family. So I think talking about voting is a perfect way to sort of dip her toe back in the political waters. And she doesn't have to really mention any politicians by name, but you can sort of tell where her loyalties lie, especially if you look back on past comments. But yeah, it just seems like a great way to kind of talk about politics without alienating either side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like she's just going to do more and more in, the less than 70 days that we have until the election. So we'll see what happens. We'll definitely see what happens. Well, as we soak up those last days of summer, I can't even believe that we're saying that. I mean, it just seems like the past 6 months have been a blur. But if you want to catch up on some last minute summer reading, the Duchess of Cornwall has you covered, right?
Yes, I loved this list of her summer reads.
Me too.
Yeah, she recommended, I think, 5 books. They're total beach reads, like action-packed, page-turning novels. I'm going to check some of them out.
I am too. And one of them has like a little bit of a royal tie to it.
Yes, that one was really interesting. I'm going to definitely check that out and try to read between the lines and see what sort of some of Camilla's deep thoughts about her position in life are. I think maybe there could be some hints. And I thought it was great that she spotlighted the Irish writer Edna O'Brien, whose book is called Girls. So Edna O'Brien has been writing since the 60s. She was very controversial because her books were very overtly feminist. And I just thought that pick really surprised me and sort of added a new dimension to my understanding of Camilla. And I'm definitely going to check that one out too.
Totally. I love learning more and more things about Camilla. I feel like people have really warmed to her over the past few years. And, we kind of see a different side of her, which I like.
Yeah, I really, it is good to sort of see a few more aspects of her personality coming out for sure.
So let's keep talking about Camilla because it is time to spill the royal tea. And a new report came out that the Duchess of Cornwall tried to lend Meghan a helping hand when she first became a member of the royal family.
Yes, apparently Camilla took Meghan out to lunch a few times and told her, the bad press, the negative attention is sort of part of what it means to marry into the royal family. And if you just wait it out, it will go away. So apparently Meghan, the palace aides that were talking about this story said that Meghan didn't take Camilla's advice. Do you think that's the case, or do you think maybe she did? I don't know.
I kind of think that she didn't because they kind of, jumped ship a little early. But, maybe she did in some ways. But, I guess when the Camilla and Charles scandal came about, there wasn't really this social media world that existed, and there wasn't so many personal attacks, and maybe it just got way too much for her and she just couldn't handle it anymore. And neither could
I think comparing the treatment that Camilla got to the treatment that Meghan got, there are a lot of similarities, but I think the big difference, like you said, is just the relentless onslaught of social media attention. Because at least when it's just in the newspaper, you can just not read the newspaper.
Right.
So it's a little bit easier to ignore, maybe. I don't know.
Right, totally. But when your phone is blowing up with a million different reports about yourself, and some of them are lies, some of them aren't, it's a lot to deal with. I couldn't imagine. But it seemed like Camilla tried to do the same thing for Kate as well, because Camilla is a normal type of person kind of marrying into the royal family, as was Kate and as was Meghan.
Yeah, so it seems like Kate is kind of taken a page from the Camilla book in terms of never complain, never explain, and that mindset that the royal family normally likes to carry out. So she definitely seems like she's on the Camilla train, I would say.
Definitely does, yeah. And like we were kind of saying before, it seems like the public's perception of Camilla has definitely softened over the years, because at one point she was probably one of the most hated people in London, I would imagine.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be the person who people compare to Diana.
No, that's, yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. But it's nice that she's kind of finding her own way and giving us some summer books that we can catch up on, which I love.
Yeah.
So in other news, that there are some rumors going around that Queen Elizabeth is not going back to Kensington Palace for the foreseeable future. So this is a bit surprising. Obviously, everything going on with the coronavirus is the reason why, but I can't imagine the Queen not being back at the palace.
Yeah, it's interesting because she and her sister and her parents mostly stayed at Windsor Castle during World War II.
Right.
So this is sort of a familiar place for her to go when the country's going through a rough time. And I think it might even give people some solace to know that she is going there again, because, you know, the country came out of World War II and the country will come out of this crisis too. So
right, yeah. And like during this time, she has been leaning on other members of the royal family, especially William and Kate, who have kind of really stepped up during this time. And we got reporting that, you know, the Queen is so proud of how Kate has been handling herself during this time and, you know, really stepped up. They have a really close relationship, and that, you know, Kate always goes to her for advice, and the Queen is always happy to impart her wisdom. So it seems like these two have a really close relationship.
There were some reports early on that the Queen was a little bit skeptical of Kate, but I think now Kate has proven to everyone that she is a very steadfast and trustworthy member of the royal family.
Oh, definitely. She is certainly come into her own, and she does. It was funny. We were doing something the other day, and I was watching back her engagement interview with William, and how, you know, soft-spoken she was, and how like didn't really know the right words to say, it seemed like. And now she's like, obviously she's kind of used to it by now and knows the ropes and really has come into her own.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's move on to our royal history moment of the week. I'm so excited about this because on August 31st, National Geographic is airing a 1-hour documentary called Being the Queen. It is a sweeping documentary that provides a captivating window into the extremely private life of the Queen. And filmmaker Tom Jennings, he's going to be joining us in just a second to talk all about it. But first, here is a sneak peek.
It was very much a conventional British household. He was very much the man of the family. He took the decisions. She looked up to him in their private life. Obviously, as princess, she had a lot of official things to do. But they were still able, with these 2 small children, to have this family group.
Prince Philip was basically a man, and he was a big man, and he was a man's man too. I think there must have been moments when it would have been pretty heavy for him to take.
This extremely active, enthusiastic young man who suddenly finds his whole life is going to be taken away from him, and probably thinking he'll become a yes man for the rest of his life.
So I love in this clip that we get, like, obviously the archival footage of the Queen and Prince Philip, but that, you know, when she first became Queen, that was a huge stress on their marriage.
Yes, it definitely was. And it's very easy to imagine that stressing any marriage out. But I think this was also during a time when husbands and wives didn't really know each other that well before they got married. It was sort of like, you know, you dated for a few months and then all of a sudden you're running a household together. So that, on top of dealing with such a huge role and a huge responsibility, is hard to even imagine.
I couldn't even imagine. Oh my God. All right, to help us break down the royal rules and to break down this amazing documentary is Emmy and Peabody award-winning filmmaker and executive producer of Being the Queen, Tom Jennings. Tell everybody kind of the premise and how Being the Queen kind of came about.
We were looking for a theme for the whole film because, there's been a lot done on Elizabeth,
Sure.
a lot of films, a lot of books. And in sorting through all of the material, we came upon a quote from a royal historian, Robert Lacey, I think his name is, and it's right at the beginning of the film because that became our template to follow. And he said something along the lines of, when you look at all the problems the Queen has faced in the monarchy, it's all about love and sex and marriage.
Mm-hmm. So true.
And Diana is and Charles, that is included within that.
Mm-hmm.
But it, in a sense, you could talk about how she's been involved or not involved in governance and the role of the United Kingdom in the world. But we wanted to, it's called Being the Queen. And so what is it like being the Queen? There's this public persona, which she has maintained so well. But behind the scenes, she's dealing with all of this chaos from her own children, certainly her grandchildren sometimes, her sister. Don't forget, her father became king because he abdicated the throne, and suddenly she found out that she was going to be queen one day.
I don't even imagine.
Her father died at a very, very young age, and all of a sudden she is queen.
Definitely. And I mean, you mentioned marriage, and her marriage suffered when she first became queen because, like you said, her father died at such a young age. They thought that they would have years and years and years to kind of maybe mentally prepare for something like that. And all of a sudden they're kind of thrust into this spotlight, don't even have time to grieve her father, and don't even really have time to become to be newlyweds.
You are correct. Can you imagine? She had gone off thinking her father was fine. He had been suffering from lung cancer and other diseases at the time, but I think he was 56 years old when he passed. And she went off for a tour of some of the Commonwealth countries and had started in Kenya. Mm-hmm. And just 6 days into this tour, after her father had waved goodbye at the airport in London,
right,
he dies. Right. And she is thrust into the role of queen. And Philip, who is, it's fascinating to find out their story. I didn't know that she had met him at age 12.
No, it's crazy.
But Philip is, he's his own man. He's his man, he's described in the film as he's a man's man. He's very good looking. He's athletic. He's in the Navy. And now he has to accept the role that his wife will be the queen. He will not be the king. And he will have to, I think what they both realize is he and they as a couple will have to put country first and being a couple second. And when you're talking about someone who's 25 years old having to deal with that, and he was just a few years older than her, that's quite a burden to take on.
He's the kind of guy that was like, a man's man that likes to kind of get out there and kind of, live his life freely. And this really, really took a toll on the beginning of their marriage.
Correct. I think he had to find his way. And I think as far as their marriage went, they've kept it fairly quiet. We explore it a bit from people who were there. But I'm sure it was very strained at first. And for someone like Philip to acquiesce to the nation and basically give up his bride to the world and take a back seat to everything that's going on. I think he managed to get through it, but I'm sure it was a very strained time for them.
Definitely. When you were doing that research and listening to all these interviews, is there one that really stood out for you when you were like, oh my God, this story is incredible?
there were actually several. My favorite part of the whole film was a story I had not heard or seen before. And it was actually after Diana had died, and people were clamoring for, where's the Queen? She was up in Balmoral with William and Harry and Charles and her family. And she finally came back. And there's this great footage, which I had not seen or had forgotten, when she actually goes to the gates of Buckingham Palace and sees all the flowers there and gets out in the crowd. And it was an extraordinary moment. And we had one of the Queen's confidants talk about how when she got out of the car, the Queen, that she could hear the whispers from the crowd of like, oh, nice of you to show up, things like that, because people were upset that she hadn't come sooner. And the moment for me that was truly extraordinary, and that we were able to marry it with the images, was when it's described how a woman in the crowd gave the Queen a bouquet of flowers. And the Queen's response was, would you like me to place them for you? And the woman giving her the flowers responded, no, ma'am, it's for you. And in the description of that moment, you learn that people realized that she was a grandmother, she was a human being, she was going through so much. And to me, that still is the most powerful moment. I'd never heard that described that way before, and it's my favorite part of the film.
And I know that this airs on August 31st on National Geographic at 9 p.m. But before that is an updated version of Diana in her own words, correct?
That is correct, yes. It's a 2-hour film. It starts 2 hours before that. And it's coming back out, and we have included some additional footage to try and show what's been going on now with Diana's two sons, William and Harry, where they're at. Obviously, William is kind of in line for the throne and is married to Kate and is carrying on the royal traditions, while Harry, his younger brother, has certainly taken a different path, and we show that as well. And we showed how certain things that were happening, especially in Harry and Meghan's lives, kind of parallel what was going on with Diana in 1992, the Annus Horribilis. When the book came out, here we are with another book coming out, certainly creating a huge uproar in many ways. There was, in 1992, the question of whether Diana had participated in the book.
Right.
And it's almost haunting that we're having the same question all these years later with her son, Harry, and Meghan, his wife, of whether they participated in the book. But I don't know if we'll, years from now, hear a bunch of audio cassette tapes that were secretly recorded for the authors by Harry and Meghan, but that's what Harry's mother did. And to Andrew Morton's credit, by the way, he kept her as a source secret until after she had passed, even though there was so much speculation.
Right.
It wasn't until many, many years later that people found out that, yes, it was actually Diana that told him all those stories, and he had the tapes to prove it.
Prove it. Well, it looks like maybe Harry and Meghan might be the next documentary on the
I am ready for it. I enjoy telling these stories. I think, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and, I remember stories of princes and King Arthur, and in some ways the royals represent kind of that childhood dream and fantasy that a lot of us were raised with. So the fascination has never really gone away for me, and I hope I get to do more of these.
Well, we hope you get to do more because we enjoy watching them so much.
Thank you, Christine.
Tom, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I really appreciate you taking so much time.
You got it. Not a problem.
Thank you, and congratulations. Yes, I got to watch it. It is fantastic. I'm so excited for everybody to see it on August 31st on the National Geographic channel at 9 p.m. Eastern. And now this is preceded by an update of Diana in her own words on the anniversary of her death. So mark your calendars. Definitely check it out. It is a must-see for royal fans.
Yeah, wow. That sounds amazing. The Diana in her own words update. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so excited about it. All right, before we wrap up, we have to check in on our pint-sized palace, our royal kiddos, and we actually got some big news on Archie this week, that he is going to be a prince whether he likes it or not.
Yes, I was pulling for this, honestly. I just wanted him to be a prince. I don't know why. It just seems right.
It does seem right. So he will become a prince officially when Prince Charles takes the crown, right?
Right. So he will become a prince. It's unclear whether or not he will use the HRH title when he turns 18. He, I guess, will have the right to choose whether he wants it or not. And Meghan and Harry are no longer using that honorific. So that's going to be interesting to see.
I feel like that will be some awkward dinner conversations if he decides to use the HRH title and they do not.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And I think he now has to ask whoever is king at the time that he gets married whether or not he will be able to get married. He has to get permission.
I mean, I guess that makes sense because obviously Harry had to do that. Obviously William had to do it, but you never really think that like the great grandkid or the grandkids will have to do that. It doesn't really process, but yeah, he'll have to ask for permission, which is kind of crazy.
Right. Unless William and Kate have another child or their children have started having children, because only the 6 nearest people in line to the throne have to ask the monarch. This was something that was decided in 2013, that it only applies to the first 6 people in the line of succession. So he might get out scot-free and not have to do that. We'll see.
That's true. Maybe. It's so many rules and regulations.
Yeah, it's wild.
It really is. Well, Molly, thank you so much for breaking down everything Royals with me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And make sure to check back every Thursday on YouTube at 10:30 for Royally Us. Keep commenting, keep subscribing, and we'll see you guys next week.